All right, all right. Welcome all to the Common Unity Podcast. We are here today with a very special guest who I will introduce in just a minute. I just wanted to say thank you all for being here. You could be anywhere in the world doing anything you want to do right now, but instead you chose to spend that time with us. And I am so thankful and happy that you would do that. Please don't forget when you get done watching the video, swing by the discussion page. Anything you might want to add to this conversation, please do, because it's all about learning from each other. That's how we have to do it in order to make sure that we all reach our maximum potential. Right now, I'm getting ready to introduce you to a man I had the pleasure to work with for a while. Most of you don't know, I was an educator for 15 years. The last 8 years of that I spent as an administrator. But the 1 year I was with this man, I probably learned more about being an administrator than the rest of that time put together. So now I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Ernest Ward.
Hello, guest. I'm excited and proud to be here and be a part of this opportunity to share this time with Mr. Jones, Jeffrey.
You know, when I think of the days that we spent together, one thing pops in my head right away. And this comes to be quite often. I remember one day you were talking to a bunch of students who were having issues, and you had them all sent to the cafeteria from all grade levels. And you spoke to them not as really an administrator, but as a person who really cared about them. And that struck me because I could tell looking at them that they were listening. Now, had you taken a different tack with that, they probably wouldn't have. But what gave me so much pride is the fact that most of those kids are from the same environment that you grew up in. And it's like they could look at you, they listened to you, and you could tell there was a large amount of respect in those little faces and those little eyes. I'll never forget that day. Let me ask you something. I've seen over and over again where you're very compassionate when you deal with the students, and that affects them positively. But was that always the way you were as an educator, or is that something you learned over time?
Well, I think one of the things that made me that way is that I'd realized that I had accomplished more than I should have accomplished. I remember when I got out of college, and at first I went in law enforcement, and I was a policeman. And one of my teachers, she said jokingly, but I knew she meant what she said. And what she said, Ernest, we always knew you'd make your living with a gun. We just didn't think you'd be on this side of the law.
Wow.
You know, and that kind of that made me do a lot of thinking, you know. And I said, wow, you know, here were the people who were responsible for shaping my life and making sure that they instilled in me certain things that would make me successful in life. And yet they didn't believe in me. And I felt that as I encountered individuals and I had that opportunity, I wanted to be genuine when I encountered people. And I wanted to understand that when I went off to college, I didn't take the SAT. I didn't take the ACT. Uh, and I probably shouldn't have gotten in college, but I went to a historical Black college, and they didn't make any excuses about how far behind I was academically. I couldn't even write complete sentences when I showed up at college. And I didn't know that they didn't teach me because they didn't see me as being a college student. I didn't know how to use commas. I didn't know how to use punctuation marks. I had run-on sentences, and I was writing the same way I was in college, the way I did in school, and papers that they was giving me A's on in high school, they were marking up and putting F's on, and I didn't understand it. And so they did prepare me. But yet, Stillman College didn't make any excuses. They didn't blame it on my parents. They didn't blame it on my school. They didn't blame it on me. They took what they received and they made me into a student. And that's what I loved about attending a historical Black college. I probably couldn't have gotten into a white university. And they took me where I was and took me where I needed to be. And so that's the passion that I took with me, because people did it for me. And so I wanted to be able to do it for others. And so that's why I had the passion that you saw, because somebody did it for me.
And I must say it works very well. Works very well. I'll tell you well, I just finished a book, my second book, by the way. It's with the editor right now. Hopefully it'll be out soon. But it's called Law Enforcement in America: Broken Social Contract. And one of the things that I talked about in there was something that you and I were talking about one day. And I'd like for you to do a deeper dive with the audience. And what you informed me of, I kind of knew about the school to prison pipeline, but I never thought about it from the aspect that you explained it to me. And when you were saying people were being groomed from elementary school, and I started researching a little harder, you're absolutely right. So can you share with us some of the things that you picked up and gleaned about how that happens and what we can do as a people to help stop that from happening?
Well, even since then, since that time, I even have, I would say, a greater understanding. And one of the things, when I think about a computer system, a computer system have what is, and I'm no computer expert, but I know a computer system has something they call a default mode.
Yep.
To where when everything else failed, you can send it back to default mode and it'll go back to what it was originally intended to do. It reset. And when I think about America has a default mode. And I was reading one day and it hit me when I was looking at a case. And as I was reading through this case, where an individual wanted his freedom, and he felt that he deserved his freedom because he was in a free state. And so he fought to the highest court in the land. And you can look it up, and it's called the Dred Scott decision. And it blew my mind when I read that the justices said that not only was it never intended for Dred Scott to be free, but it said that he had no rights that a white man was obligated to even respect or honor.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the default mode of America when it interacts with the Black community. And you see it as plain as day. When you see what happened with redlining, when the federal government chose to not give loans to people because they were Black, and then wouldn't give loans to white people if they lived near somebody that was Black.
Yeah.
So the federal government made white people who probably didn't hate us for their benefit.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the redlining and then it impacted the GI Bill, soldiers who went in and gave their lives and fought to put their lives at risk to fight for the freedom in America. And yet when they came home, they couldn't get the same benefits that the white soldiers got. And the GI Bill would allow you to buy a home, and buying a home automatically, immediately threw you into the middle class environment.
Yep.
So now you got a home and you can send your kids to college based on money you can borrow off the equity in your home.
Yeah.
And now your kids go to college, and yet the Black families who father went to college didn't get to get that benefit. And so the system, when it comes to the educational system, and there was a time that I would say the educational system is failing the poor people and the minority people. But then I was reading a book one day where this author said, no, it's not failing. It's doing exactly what it was intended to do.
Absolutely.
There's no failure. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. What happens is that people know that they cannot intentionally discriminate in the school system based on race.
Yeah.
And so the laws are written so that they make it look like the housing pattern, you can't control where people live. So if it's based on a housing pattern, we can't control that. But yes, you did.
Yes.
The housing pattern that exists today, you created it. The government created the ghetto, the hood, the impoverished community, the trap, where peoples are trapped into an environment and they can't get out of it. And the only way they can get out of it is to be able to vote people into office who have compassion for them. But then you have the voting system gerrymandered so that you can't vote people in. so that you don't have a voice. Everything is interconnected. And if we can't see that interconnectedness, then we miss the big picture. Having access to a quality job, having access to affordable housing, having access to a quality education. There's an interconnectedness of having access to a quality education, affordable housing, access to a equitable and fair judicial and law enforcement system.
Yeah.
All of those things, access to the voting ballot, all of those things are interconnected. We don't need just one of them. We need them all.
Yes.
Because they all work together. When one don't work for you, you can make the other one work for you by voting people in who will keep you in mind.
Yep.
But if I don't give you access to affordable living wages, then you can't have access to affordable housing.
Right.
And if you don't have access to affordable housing, then I keep you in communities so that you don't have access to a quality education.
Yep.
And if you don't have access to a quality education, you're more likely to find yourself caught up in the judicial system and dealing with law enforcement. And so it's a cycle.
Yep.
All of it matters. And if we don't understand that everything is interrelated, Dr. King said that, a single garment. And we didn't understand it. I didn't understand it to its fullest. But it's all interconnected. It's just like your body. It's just like our body works. Our body are several different systems working as one body.
Yeah.
I have my circulatory system. I have my reproductive system. I have my digestive system. You know what I'm saying? All of those systems work as one body.
Yep.
And Jeffrey, here's what's so powerful about that. Because we know more now, the doctors can take my blood and look at my blood and tell me that there's something going on with my other systems. That's how interrelated they are.
Yep.
And likewise, the universe is the same way. We need each other. There's an interrelatedness. Everybody understands it but humanity. You know, farmer understands that if I'm going to plant corn, and if I'm going to have the best crop of corn that my seed can produce, my neighbor can't have an inferior seed.
Right.
Because if my neighbor has an inferior seed, his corn is going to cross-pollinate with mine and going to bring mine down and not let it reach its full potential.
Yep. And
so we need each other. We need each other more than we know.
I have to agree with you 100%. And that's one of the things that I try to get people to understand. I try to get people to understand that while you have poor people, lower income people that are constantly fighting each other about racial things, things of that nature, it's because the system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. And while they're fighting each other over scraps and nothing, these who are really controlling everything at the top can do whatever they want to do, and nobody's even paying attention. And it just becomes a snowball rolling down a hill that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, with the low income people at the bottom of the hill waiting to get rolled over. And it's sad to see it. When you say people don't understand, it's true. A lot of people, you can explain it to them and they still won't understand it. I think that education is one of the most important things that you could have. One of the most important things that you can have. And that's why for so long, people fought to keep us out of the classroom. And then even when they had to put us in a classroom, they wanted us in an inferior classroom with inferior books, inferior teachers, so that we could not learn the same things that they were learning, the things that would help you to control the situations that we are in. And it saddens me. This is one of the things that really saddens me when I see kids who are not taking advantage of the education system because, like you said, this thing replicates itself. Everything is connected. They're put in a hole and people are throwing dirt on them. So how do they fight that at a young age? They don't have the wherewithal to do it. They don't have the resources to do it. They don't have somebody who could tell them how to do it. And it's just exasperating at times. I look at society in general, and if we want to be the country that we say we want to be or say that we are, we all have to work together. It can't be a thing where we could separate from each other and just do our own thing and expect for this to grow. Because you're right, it's not going to be as strong. I look at my son. He didn't get married till he was like 39, 38, 39 years old. And I look at his wife, very beautiful young lady. She's got a heart as big as gold. I love her just like she was my own child. When you look at her father's side of the family, they were mainly Italian. When you look at her mother's side of the family, they were mainly French Canadian. And I look at my daughter-in-law, look at my son, and then I look at my grandbaby, and to me, he's the most handsome kid I ever seen. You know, I'm gonna be a bit biased, but that's the way it is. And I love the way that they interact with him because even though he's not 2 years old yet, you don't see him sitting in front of a TV watching these dramas and thrillers. And no, when you see him sitting in front of a TV, he's watching something that's going to teach him how to count. It's going to teach him how to spell. It's going to teach him something. That's what he watches on TV. And he doesn't get to do that all day either. But then when they interact with him, it's not just playtime. They're interacting with him in learning ways. And I love that about watching them together. I wish more families did that type thing. But absolutely, a lot of them, they just don't understand the importance of providing that kid with the structure and the learning so that when they do get in school, they can excel. I remember, just like you said, people think that the North and the South have big differences, but they don't. I remember growing up in the 60s and 70s in Rochester, New York, and redlining was so bad that in the 60s, there were only like 3 neighborhoods blacks could stay in. You had multiple families living in a one-family house because they couldn't get housing anywhere else. You know, you'd use a bathroom, you got 3 families using one bathroom. That's how bad it was. So, you know, when people think, oh, well, he grew up here, so he's different, or he grew up there, so he's different. No, we just seen hardship in different ways. But we've all had to experience that hardship.
Yes.
It's got to be a way where we can respect each other and learn from each other and break this cycle. And that's why I have you on here today, because I know the way that you can break things down in the terms that makes it very easy for people to understand. And I tell you, some of the things you broke down today have been exemplary. So as we go through this change process, tell me about some of the things, how we can change some of these things.
Well, the first thing we have to recognize and understand that in America, there's a caste system. And most people would say that, well, that's not true.
It is.
But there's a caste system in America. And you don't expect to see a caste system in America. You see it in third world countries. where you where people, you don't have a way to go up the ladder. And it's not as bad in America as it is in other countries, but it still exists. And the only way that you can escape from that caste system is through the process of a quality education, access to finances, so having affordable living wages, exercising your right to vote, and voting people into office that have you in mind when they make decisions. Having a law enforcement who understand you as an individual and don't look at you through the lens of however they do it. One of the things that we have to be able to do, Jeffrey, is sometimes we find ourselves, and sometimes, and I've been guilty of it, we blame the people for the problem. But people are never the problem. The problem is the problem. And we have to learn to separate the two. And for so long, we've said it, and we used to say, you hear people say, hate the sin, but love the sinner. Didn't know how to do it. Because if you ask the sinner, he will tell you, I'm the one that felt hated. We didn't know how to discern and separate the two. And one day, two things happened. I heard Dr. King say in a speech once, he said, I went downtown and I heard a man that was singing a song. And the song he was singing, he said, I've been down so long that down don't bother me. And he said that, I understood that concept. And he said, there are some people that have been down for so long, down don't bother them. And so they don't see what you see. They don't hear what you hear. And so that helped me. And then I was reading one day where it said that Jesus went into a town and there were people in the town that he could not heal them because of their disbelief. I didn't know how to wrap my head around that. Until one day I was reading and Nathan was having a conversation with his brother. And he said, and they was talking, and he said, we found him. We found the Messiah. We found him, the one from Nazareth. And his brother told him, said, don't you know nothing good comes out of Nazareth? And it wasn't until I saw those two places being in the same region, a group of people who said, don't you know nothing good comes out of Nazareth, and a place where nobody could be healed because of their disbelief. When I put those two together, here's what hit me, Jeffrey. When you begin to believe, because people have told you, nothing good comes out of Columbus. You know, nothing good comes out of LaGrange. You know, nothing good comes out of the Ward family. You know, nothing good comes out of the Jones family. You know, once you hear that long enough, you begin to believe it. And so Jesus couldn't heal the people because of their belief system, and they didn't believe they deserved to heal him. That's why he couldn't heal them. They didn't believe they deserved the healing. And so there are people that you and I have tried to help that we couldn't help them because they didn't believe they deserved to be helped. And so people have been down for so long that down don't bother them.
Yeah.
And so we have to stay with them until we can transform their mindset, transform their belief system, transform how they think and believe about themselves to where there's a renewing of the mind. And only then are you capable of transitioning those people to the next level. Because see, Jesus, I'm going to say it this way. Moses delivered people from Egypt, but it took 40 years for him to deliver Egypt out of them.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
the biggest challenge is delivering you from yourself. And that's a process. You know, we talk about salvation and we talk about the process of saving folks. But the more I study and the more I read, Jeffrey, you can't understand salvation until you understand justification, to why you can be saved. And once you understand justification, it gives you a brighter understanding of salvation, but you can't stop there because you must understand sanctification, that salvation is a process. It's not an overnight deal. I'm constantly renewing my mind, renewing my thought process, getting a better understanding, getting a better belief system. There are things that I thought I understood that I really didn't understand. And so it makes sense when it say, when I was a child, I thought of it as a child, but when I became a man, I put away my childish ways.
Yep.
And I was still an adult. When I became a man, I put away childish ways. It didn't say I put away childish ways and then I became a man. As I was a man, I still had childish ways that I had to put away.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, here, my daughter for her 18th birthday, Jeffrey, she asked me, she said, Dad, I want to jump out of an airplane. And I got angry. I got mad. I said, hard as we try to stay alive, you think I'm finna let you jump out of an airplane? You got to be kidding me. She said, Daddy, well, let's talk about it. I said, oh, ain't nothing to talk about. We ain't talking about it. And so I said, okay. I went away. I come back to her. I said, well, baby, let's talk about it. And I said, you know what? This daughter, she's done everything I ever asked her to do. She's straight A student, living a great life, proud of her, been accepted to West Point Military Academy. I said, what? I'm going to let her do it. On my way to drive to let her jump out of that airplane, Here's what happened. Some of them childish ways were put away. As we were driving, this is what was spoken to my heart. God revealed to me, he said, the barrier that you created to protect your child, over a period of time, it became a prison. And he said, from this day forth, don't allow your limitations to restrict your children's aspiration. And brother, that broke me.
That's great. That is great.
To realize that my limitations had restricted the people that I love the most aspiration, that I wouldn't let them grow outside of what I understood.
Mm-hmm.
And how often do we do that in education? How often do we do that in life?
Way too often. Way too often.
Putting away my childish ways.
Well, my brother,
I would say we have to do.
As much as I hate to, because I tell you, I can sit here and talk to you all night. As much as I hate to, I'm going to have to close this one out. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and spending that time to help us learn.
Well, we learn together. And I can say one of the things that I've done that has helped me the most is to stop painting a broad brush. One of the things, I look for what can unite us instead of what can separate us.
There it is.
And there was a time I used to say, I used to blame a lot of the issues on white people. But that was a broad brush.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I was president of the NAACP, and the NAACP would not have existed. Some of the founding members of the NAACP were white.
Yeah.
And so what I say is the white culture. You can be a part of you can be white but not be a part of the white culture and stand against systemic issues that keep people locked in. And so for me, that has been some of the things that I've been working toward, to be more inclusive than exclusive, not to exclude people, and to do everything I can to be inclusive. I don't care who they are. And that's where I am.
It's a great goal. That is a great goal. Well, thank you, brother. And all you folks who tuned in with us today for this Common Unity podcast, please stop by, deliver your comments on the discussion page, and help us to further this narrative. But for right now, we got to say good night and take care all.
Good night.
Good night.